People have the power. Patti Smith here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report on this 40th anniversary of the FBI and police killing of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, Black Panthers in Chicago. We're going to turn right now to Deborah Johnson. Deborah Johnson was the fiancée of Fred Hampton. She was in bed with Fred when the police raided the apartment. She was, well, more than 8 months pregnant. This is how she described the raid. Her son, Fred Hampton Jr., is sitting on her lap as she describes how his father was killed.
Someone came into the room, started shaking the chairman, said, Chairman, wake up, the pigs are vamping. Still half asleep, I looked up, and I saw bullets coming from, it looked like the front of the apartment, from the kitchen area. They were, pigs were just shooting. And about this time, I jumped on top of the chairman. He looked up. Looked like all the pigs converged at the entranceway to the bedroom area, back bedroom area. The mattress is just going, you could feel the bullets going into it. I just knew we'd be dead, everybody in there. When he looked up, just looked up, he didn't say a word, and he didn't move, except for moving his head up. He laid his head back down to the side like that. He never said a word, and he never got up out the bed. The person who was in the room, they kept hollering out, stop shooting, stop shooting. We have a pregnant woman or a pregnant sister in here. At that time, I was 8.5 to 9 months pregnant. My baby was to be delivered in 2 weeks. Pigs kept on shooting. So he kept on hollering out. Finally, they stopped. They pushed me and the other brother by the kitchen door and told us to face the wall. Heard the pig say, he's barely alive, he'll barely make it. I assumed they were talking about Chairman Fred. So then they started shooting the pigs, they started shooting again. I heard the sister scream. They stopped shooting. Pig said, he's good and dead now. The pigs running around laughing, they were really happy, you know, talking about Chairman Fred is dead. I never saw Chairman Fred again.
That was Deborah Johnson, the fiancée of Fred Hampton, on her lap, their little son, Fred Hampton, who is now an activist around prisoner rights and prisoner issues around this country. Jeffrey Haas is our guest. He is author of The Assassination of Fred Hampton, How the FBI and the Chicago Police Murdered Black Panther. Talk about what came of that after this day 40 years ago.
While I was interviewing the survivors, my partners went to the apartment. And when we gathered all the evidence, it turned out that the police had fired 90 shots into the apartment with a submachine gun, shotguns, pistols, and a rifle. There was only one outgoing shot, and that came from a Panther who had been fatally wounded, and it was a vertical shot after he was hit himself. So Hanrahan, who was the police were assigned to the state's attorney, a politically ambitious law and order prosecutor who wanted to get the political advantage of having attacked and taken out the Panthers, was on the TV that morning saying the Panthers opened fire. It turned out we proved that, quite to the contrary, it was a shoot-in, not a shootout. What we uncovered years later, we also filed a civil rights suit after the charges were dropped against the Panthers. And in addition to proving, as I said, that it was a one-sided raid, that the police came in firing, the evidence also showed that Fred Hampton was in fact killed with 2 bullets, parallel bullets, fired into his head at point-blank range. He wasn't killed with the bullets through the walls. But what we uncovered was that the FBI had obtained a floor plan of Fred Hampton's apartment. That floor plan was complete with all the furniture, including the bedroom where Hampton and Johnson slept, and a rectangle showing the bed. And it turned out that this FBI informant, William O'Neill, and his control took that floor plan and gave it to Hanrahan's raiders before the raid, so that they came in knowing the layout, knowing where Fred would be sleeping. And when we looked at the directions of the bullets, in fact, they converged on the bed where Fred Hampton was sleeping that morning.
As I recall, a lot of the bullets were shot from the floor below as well as they were.
No, they were from the front door and the back door, and then they took the machine gun and stitched the wall in the front, and that went through all of the bedrooms in the apartment.
And the role of the FBI and of COINTELPRO, the FBI's massive program against dissidents in the United States. How did you uncover that as well?
Well, first there was a burglary at the Media, Pennsylvania FBI office, in which some draft dodgers uncovered that there was this program that talked about basically it was an attack on the entire black movement, and particularly on the Panthers, and it talked about disrupting, destroying, and neutralizing the Panthers by any means necessary. And one of their objectives was prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the black masses. Fred Hampton, at 21, was a tremendously charismatic and powerful figure in Chicago. He could talk to welfare mothers, gang kids, and he could talk to law students and college students. He had the ability to pull people together. You got a little glimpse of that in the clip that you saw. But he made people believe in themselves. He made people feel powerful, and that they could bring about change. And that was his real threat. And so we knew there was this program to prevent the rise of a messiah. We knew about the floor plan. Then we uncovered a document that they gave the informant a bonus after the raid because his information was invaluable to the success of the raid. So internally, the FBI actually took credit for this raid, for the results that Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were killed.
Talk about Willie O'Neill.
William O'Neill was he was uncovered because he became a witness in another case. And I guess we all knew William O'Neill. He was a very flamboyant person, and I guess my idea of an informant was somebody who sits quietly in the corner and takes mental notes. That was not William O'Neill. He was a provocateur. He built an electric chair that was supposedly to threaten potential informants in the party when he was an informant. He attempted to build what he called a rocket that would go from the Panther office to City Hall until Fred Hampton...
Explain his position in the Black Panthers.
He was the chief of security, and at one point he was Fred Hampton's bodyguard. And he was present the night of the raid and left. And there was evidence that Fred Hampton was drugged, and he's never admitted it, but some of that evidence suggests that O'Neill was the one who drugged him the night of the raid.
I want to ask, just play for a minute, get your response to Cook County State's Attorney Edward Hanrahan. After the raid, he repeatedly claimed the Panthers had opened fire on the police. This is how he described what happened.
The immediate, violent, criminal reaction of the occupants in shooting at announced police officers emphasizes the extreme viciousness of the Black Panther Party. So does their refusal to cease firing at the police officers when urged to do so several times.
That was Ed Hanrahan, the Cook County State's Attorney. Your response to him, and also what happened to Hanrahan as you sought to pursue the truth of the murder of Fred Hampton?
When we gathered the evidence, and you can tell which way a bullet enters from the smaller hole and exits with a larger hole and the wood splayed outward, it became clear that, as I said, 90 shots came in, and at most one, a vertical shot, went out. The Panthers were smart enough to invite the community in. The police never sealed it. And the black community, which had been divided on the Panthers, was not divided on the fact that a young man was murdered in his bed, a young leader, at 4:30 in the morning. So there was a tremendous reaction. And Hanrahan became defensive and told the story that you just saw. And later on, he even went further and said, well, Fred Hampton personally was firing at the police. And he gave the Chicago Tribune a photograph. The photograph had 2 black dots on it, and he says, these are the gunshots that Fred Hampton fired. We invited the press out there. It turns out those dots were nail heads. And I think that was the beginning of the end of Edward Hanrahan. He never got elected to anything again. Even a Republican was elected state's attorney of Cook County, which was unheard of. He ran for mayor. He ran for congressman. And basically, his political career ended on December 4th, just at the time when he thought it would rise.
Juan, I want to talk about the overall context with Jeffrey Haas, but In 1969, you were one of the leaders of the Columbia student protest, one of the founders of the Young Lords. What was the effect 40 years ago today? Where were you on this day?